Hey, good morning, everyone. Josh of Severe Weather. Happy Monday to you. Happy Columbus Day as well for those who observe. We've got quite a bit to talk about here for Mexico and the Gulf of Mexico as the tropics are very active here for the second week of October. Lots of rain coming, and we're going to take a look here at some Gulf trouble coming over the next few days. So we've got a pair of storms getting ready to hit Mexico here in the next 48 hours and then low pressure forming in the Western Gulf. All of those are going to combine and send that moisture up the East Coast, really the Southeast Coast, and some welcome rain coming for the Central Gulf Coast states, but a lot of heavy rain expected along with some gusty winds here. That will cause some issues for mariners. And all of this moisture heads across Florida, where we're going to see some heavy amounts of rain, especially the northern two-thirds of the state. And then that low pressure continues on towards the Bermuda Triangle here over the next few days. Here is a look at the Atlantic Basin. Here is that area of low pressure expected to form right now about 75 miles northeast of Coatzacoalcos, Mexico, and that's unlikely to form a named storm, but the impacts are going to be like a subtropical storm here in the western Gulf states over the next couple of days. Tail end of a front linking up with two tropical systems. That's going to mean a lot of rain, a lot of flooding potential here for Mexico, for some of the southeastern United States along the Gulf Coast here. And in addition, we have another system which is Invest AL92, which has a medium chance of becoming our next depression between now and Wednesday morning, and an 80% chance of becoming a tropical depression or storm by the weekend or early next week, with the next name on the list being Sean, S-E-A-N. So the tropics are still very busy for us here, and you can see that on the water vapor image here. And obviously, the Gulf of Mexico is the area to watch for the time being, but here is a look at the big picture, excuse me, and you can see Tropical Storm Max south of the Riviera here and new low pressure forming here in the Bay of Campeche. And that moisture is going to head up and east here, kind of following this very quick moving subtropical jet stream, feeding from the Pacific, from a big trough in the Pacific, right across northern Mexico, South Texas, into the northern Gulf states, right across Florida. A pretty direct feed here, almost a Pineapple Express, if you want to call it that. We've got a large cyclone here over the North Atlantic, and that is keeping things at bay across this portion of the Atlantic. We've got high pressure here over the Caribbean, and then we've got our next system getting ready to become a depression or storm south of the Cabo Verdes. It's at a low latitude. The good news is that because we've got this big feed of subtropical moisture here, whatever forms here is not going to be able to sneak underneath it. In fact, it's going to be heading in this direction here. So this system, while it will probably get a name, is not going to be a threat to any major land masses. So that is some good news there. Taking a wider view here, you can see the majority of the action is on the Pacific side. And let's take a look at kind of our features here. This is Tropical Storm Lydia, which is now growing. Wind shear had kept it from strengthening, but it is likely to strengthen here over the next 48 hours before making landfall here in Mexico. This is newly upgraded Tropical Storm Max, which is strengthening right up until landfall here tonight. And these two systems are, generally speaking, heading in this direction towards the Western Gulf. And we've got low pressure forming here, kind of a trough like this here from the Bay of Campeche extending across Central America into the Eastern Pacific. And another spin up here that we've got to kind of keep an eye on in the future here, probably towards the end of the week or weekend. And here you can see a pretty broad trough in place here over the Eastern Pacific, sending moisture very quickly over the Southern Gulf, or over the Northern Gulf states and the Southern United States. Here, let me get my words together here. And the good news is that all of this moisture is going to keep pretty south as we've continued to see high pressure at the surface here, sending this drier air mass here into the mid-Atlantic region. Low pressure aloft here over the Great Lakes will keep things unsettled and continue to spin waves of cloud cover, lake effect, and lake enhanced rain showers and cool, unsettled weather here for the Great Lakes in the Northeast as well as Canada. And we've got another system moving into the West Coast here, a big trough, getting ready to send a lot of rain into the Pac Northwest, especially the coastal plain over here. And so we've got this big trough, we've got this big trough, and we've got this big trough here. And that is the reason that we're seeing overall some cooler temperatures as well as more unsettled weather. This trough here is going to move eastward and potentially cause some severe weather here late this week over the plains and into the Ohio Valley. It does not look like it's going to really link up with this southern branch feature, but As this moves eastward, we are going to see unsettled weather by the weekend here across the mid-Atlantic and Northeast. Once again, big rain potential coming for portions of the east. And I know this is tropicaltidbits.com. They are ad supported, but maybe a good time to check on your tires if you are doing some traveling here with all this rain on the way. Here's a look at the eastern Atlantic, and you can see nothing of great organization, but definitely thunderstorms developing and trying to form a core here near 25 west. And it's quite possible this becomes our next named system by the time it gets out into about here, around 35 and 40 west. That's really it coming off of Africa for the time being. A little bit unusual to see still some development out here, but remember how warm the waters are in the Atlantic Ocean compared to what we typically see. We had talked about it all season long, that despite the El Nino, we were going to see an above average season in the Atlantic due to the fact that we do have warmer than average water temperatures. And when the stronger wind shear that comes with an El Nino does weaken, it gives us the potential to see storms forming and lasting for some time, especially in the central and eastern Atlantic, not quite as much in the western Atlantic. Here's a Canadian model, and you guys can see here we've got likely our next system trying to form here. This is tomorrow night, and this is Wednesday morning. And we will probably have a depression by Thursday, I would think, and then a tropical storm Thursday night and Friday. And you can see this big area of low pressure here, non-tropical over the central Atlantic, is going to entice what should be Sean to turn more northward. Let me back it up so you can see the Gulf as well. Lower pressures here in the Western Gulf over the next couple of days, and you can see a bit of a low pressure system heading up towards the central and northeastern Gulf here by Thursday. Not likely to develop into anything tropical, but could produce some locally strong wind with it and certainly some heavy rainfall. So this feature probably not getting a name. This one I think does have a better than 50% chance of becoming a tropical storm, and the next name on the list would be Sean. Here you can see though it rides around the ridge. It gets drawn northward by this large area of low pressure here, and will likely dissipate by this time next week or get absorbed into this front. So it does have about a week of potential life, and mainly the second part of this week and the weekend before we see it probably fading here into the northern latitudes. Do need to keep an eye on the East Coast here. Unsettled weather here, both this weekend. Excuse me. You can see low pressure moves to the mid-Atlantic region, keeps things unsettled nearer to the north of its path here into Sunday morning. Then we get some dry air moving in. Then we see potentially more low pressure forming off the East Coast in time for the middle of next week. But that is still a bit of a ways off, 9 to 10 days away. So right now, certainty level is not super high. All right, so let's take a look at AL92. Let me set this in motion for you guys here, and you can see not a very well-defined system, but certainly has the thunderstorm activity with it. If you take a look at the visible image, which should hopefully be coming into play here early this morning, you can see very broad circulation, not really any kind of low-level twist. Most of everything is kind of in the mid-levels, but as you look at the last couple of frames, you do see thunderstorm towers going up here, showing the signs of a system that has the potential to strengthen here and organize. But look how far south it is, 8 degrees north. Typically, when you see a storm forming that far south, you have to be concerned in the Caribbean and in the U.S. But now that we're in the month of October, we see troughs digging farther south, weakening our ridges, and that typically leads to storms that recurve. So that is the good news here. And you can see models for the most part keep the latitudes low here until we get to about 40 west. Then we see a recurve coming on the majority of our models. There are a couple that we still need to keep an eye on, but these do not really develop that system very quickly. The ones that do develop it turn it poleward here, which would be obviously good news that we just have a fish storm. And here's our ensembles from the GFS. The operational GFS goes stronger and makes the turn sooner than the ensembles. I tend to believe the ensembles over the operational. The GFS has this bias where it tries to strengthen things too quickly here. We saw that with Philippe. We saw the GFS try to make it a major hurricane. It stayed as a tropical storm. But overall, we do like this trend of this bend turning to the north and east. So I'm going to talk about it for a few days, but I would not really get too worried about it. It is just something we need to keep an eye on at this point, but not really get too obsessed with. Now here's a look at the European ensembles. You can see this would be here, Sean. Here is our non-tropical low in the Western Gulf. And we'll have to keep an eye on things. The waters are warm here. Maybe it tries to gain some kind of subtropical characteristics. You can see a few ensemble members here do go below 1,000 millibars, but it really does have limited time to do that. And so in my mind, I don't think this becomes anything tropical. There's about a 10% chance it tries to become subtropical, meaning It gains some winds of a tropical storm, but it doesn't gain the structure fully of a tropical storm. It doesn't have the warm core with it. So just something I'm keeping an eye on for you guys. I don't think we're looking at a hurricane or anything of that nature here in the Gulf. Just locally strong winds and more so the heavy rain that we have to keep an eye on here across this region later this week. Here you can see as we head on into the weekend, what is left of this system does try to strengthen some near and south of Bermuda. It is heading out to sea, but keep an eye on things in Bermuda Friday into Friday night. And here's a look at what should be shown at this point. And you can see, generally speaking, a curve coming here to the right. And then things could get busy here in the Pacific again here next week. So that's what we'll be watching for you guys here. Here's the Pacific, now two named storms. Lydia, the healthier of the two, with more time over land. It has 65-mile-per-hour wind. This is Tropical Storm Max, which was just organizing into a depression last night. Now it's over the warm waters, gaining the possibility of strengthening further here, maybe even getting close to hurricane strength as it makes landfall here this evening across the Riviera of Mexico. Here's Lydia, here's Max. Here is our non-tropical low on the tail end of our front in the Bay of Campeche. And here is a twist that we do have to keep an eye on towards the weekend, which could be our next Pacific system. So most of the action on the Pacific side, as you would expect here, due to the fact that we're heading into October. And here's a look from Zoom Earth of our two systems. The paths may cross here in central Mexico. This is Max, 50-mile-per-hour storm, may get up to 60 before landfall this afternoon. Lydia, a 65-mile-per-hour storm, does have time to strengthen into a hurricane, and we do have hurricane watches and warnings, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit here. That is heading into west central Mexico and then into the mountainous areas where it will weaken. Here's a look at Lydia, and you can see it has been fighting some wind shear from both directions, but it is starting to grow. It's got some time still over water. You can see it is making the turn as expected. Ignore these two, they're climatology. That's where climatology would take it. We do have a big trough pushing everything east-northeast, and we're likely to see landfall here late Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning. And then what's left of that storm continues towards Texas and into the Western Gulf, kind of gets absorbed by our system that is set to form here in the Western Gulf. Here's a look at the HAFS tropical model. And you can see pressures are expected to drop into the 970s, making this a hurricane tonight. You can see it gain structure here and maybe quite a bit of wind. A lot of the tropical models say this could be getting close to Category 3 strength here before it makes landfall. And this is very concerning, maybe even Category 4 if this model is right. It should weaken very close to landfall, but it will strengthen as we get into tonight, tomorrow morning, warm waters and lessening wind shear. So do not go to sleep on the fact that this could end up being a major hurricane. Fortunately, it's going to kind of go in between major population centers, but unfortunately, if it strengthens, it becomes more of an issue here and more of a rainmaker in the Gulf of Mexico as well. Here's a look at the path here of potential destruction. And you can see hurricane warning in red, hurricane watch in pink, and tropical storm watch in yellow. The wind field is expanding, and it is likely to move in north of the Riviera here over the next 48 hours. Likely hurricane conditions within this hurricane warning area Tuesday, that's tomorrow. Hurricane and tropical storm conditions possible as we head into Tuesday, and a bigger threat for heavy rain, which will likely cause flooding, especially mudslides in the higher terrain across the state of Nayarit, as well as the southern portions of the state of Sinaloa and coastal portions of the state of Jalisco here in western Mexico, along with dangerous storm surge and swells heading up into the Baja and the west coast here of Mexico. We do have a hurricane warning in effect for Las Islas Marias, hurricane watch in effect for Playa Perula to Mazatlan here. And I apologize, my Spanish is not great. Tropical storm watch in effect from Mazatlan to Bahia, Tempa Huaya, and Manzanillo to Playa Perula as well. You can see that on the map here. Here is Puerto Vallarta. That is in Las Islas Marias, likely to see winds over 100 miles per hour. Here's Puerto Vallarta. Here's Mazatlan. Here's the area likely to get hit right around Teacapan, Playa Novillero, and heading west or east-northeastward here into this area. It'll hit the mountains, so it should weaken pretty quickly. Here's Max. Let's go to the Max if you're a Saved by the Bell fan. No, really, it is Max. Headroom, or I don't know, velocity. But it is gaining latitude now and getting ready to run out of land here, but should still strengthen a little bit more here today. Landfall likely here this afternoon into the early evening and then weakening. But that moisture gets sucked up into our Gulf system here, and you can see the track. Pretty big area under a tropical storm warning. Honestly, I think only the middle part of this cone is going to really see that tropical storm force wind, but we do have it all the way over here up the Riviera. We will likely see heavy rain, urban and flash flooding across the states of Guerrero and Michoacan, I think it is. And we do have a tropical storm warning in effect from Acapulco up the coast to Punta San Telmo, where tropical storm conditions are expected somewhere within that area, in this case, over the next 24 hours. We can see here, if we look down the coast, here's Guerrero, and try and find, here's Acapulco. And we are likely going to see that landfall. Let me find the map for you guys here. Up the coast from Acapulco. So more than likely, probably somewhere here around Zihuatanejo. I hope I said that right. And if I didn't, I apologize. But definitely winds could get up to about 60 miles per hour as this comes on shore here this evening. So let's take a look at the rest of the U.S. here. And you can see our two storms on the southern part of the map. And we see low pressure over the Western Gulf. This is tomorrow night. You see a big storm moving into the northwest here. Still our Great Lakes and Canada spinner here. And we can see the majority of the rain is going to come across here in a couple of waves over the deep south. While that storm in the northwest heads down into the plains, we'll have heavy snow across the higher terrain of the Rockies, even some of the foothills. Heavy rain over parts of Nebraska, South Dakota, and Wyoming. And then that spreads east. It picks up some Gulf moisture, and we will likely have thunderstorms here Thursday afternoon, evening. Somewhere over northwestern Missouri, southeastern Nebraska, all the way down to eastern Kansas and into central Oklahoma. And there could be some severe weather. I don't think a big tornado outbreak, but certainly some strong winds and hail from some of these storms until that low pressure heads eastward. And then as we head towards next weekend, we do see quite a bit of rain from the Great Lakes into New York State. Showers and storms over the mid-Appalachian and Ohio Valley area, and heavy rain over portions of the southeast, thunderstorms over parts of Florida. Could be a pretty big mess here next Saturday, anywhere from the Great Lakes all the way down the east coast into Florida. Quite a bit of rain coming with that. Then that storm is going to still be around in New England here early next week. This is what we hate to see with all the rain we've had so far over the summer and early fall. We've got a system that's stuck in the east and cannot really progress any further. As a result, we're probably going to see significant amounts of rain over New England and parts of the Northeast. Here you can see on the ensemble our anomaly over the next week. This is between now and next Sunday night. You can see significantly higher than average amounts of rain in the next week, especially across Mexico, but also over the western and northern Gulf, especially the panhandle of Florida, South Georgia, even southeast Louisiana, even up to the low country of Georgia and South Carolina here. We are likely to see amounts that could be 2 to 4 inches above the average. Perhaps even 8 inches above average on the Riviera. So looking pretty miserable across Mexico, over the western and northern Gulf here, as well as the Pac Northwest and across the Dakotas, Nebraska, and Iowa. Lots of rain coming here. This rain is somewhat welcome, but you see the area that's in the drought actually doesn't really get a lot of it. Houston and Lake Charles don't really get much of that rain. In fact, it's aimed more at northern Florida. We do need some rainfall. And then notice the dry air mass that's going to hold strong here from New Mexico and Arizona over into North Carolina and Virginia. Below average rain expected. We'll get some rain, but it's not going to be a significant amount here over the next week. Here's a look at our precipitable water, and you can see, look at the Pacific feed coming in here. Just a ton of moisture, tons of potential liquid here over Florida and over the northeastern Gulf here over the next several days. And the feed continues right on through the weekend. We do have a push of drier air coming down here early next week around this time, but a lot of moisture coming up into the northeast. Here comes a rebuild of moisture as well behind this system as that return flow sends moisture back up into the plains towards the middle of next week. So an active series of storms expected here. Here's the European, and take a look at these wind gusts over the Gulf of Mexico. It gets pretty windy here as our low pressure system forms in the northwestern Gulf. Gusts could get over 40 miles per hour around Pilot Town, Buras, Boothville here into the Chandeleur Islands, and maybe over 50 miles per hour on some of the oil platforms over the northern Gulf. Then take a look at this. Wind gusts approaching 50 to 60 miles per hour off of the Emerald Coast here, and 40 to 50 miles per hour off the first coast of Florida. So a lot of nasty weather over the offshore waters, but it could still be windy even inland here over East Florida, over the Gulf Coast of Florida, and over southeastern Louisiana. not a tropical system, but the winds could mimic one that will try to become subtropical here. The majority of the stronger winds will be Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday night, and early on Thursday in here, and then developing off the east coast of Florida and Georgia Thursday morning and Thursday afternoon. The NAM model, which doesn't go quite out that far, shows a pretty good ramp up of wind here with gusts off of the Texas coast over 50 miles per hour, maybe as high as 60 miles per hour, maybe even as high as 70. So while I don't think this becomes tropical, it definitely has the wind with it, and certainly it's going to have the rain as well. So just something to keep an eye on if you do have marine interests. Real quick, we'll look at the Pacific. This is what was Typhoon Koinu, now weakening to a tropical storm, scraping the coast of China, still bringing heavy rain, but not really going to strengthen anymore. You can see it'll head towards Hainan and weaken to a depression over the Gulf of Tonkin as it heads towards central Vietnam. Unfortunately, we've got another system which is poised to become a typhoon. This is Guam, and this is the Northern Mariana Islands. And this system is very much cranking up here. Tropical Storm Bolivan, winds are now up to about 70 miles per hour, and you can see it is going to continue to strengthen. The good news is that the track has shifted a little bit right of Guam. Guam got hit really badly back in May, if you remember that. But unfortunately, the Mariana Islands here are going to be in the path of this storm. It still could come close to Guam if it comes a little farther south. Winds will be up to 100 miles per hour in the next 24 hours, and then becoming a very strong, potentially super typhoon by the time it passes into areas between the Mariana Islands and southeastern Japan. And the reason I showed this to you guys, even though it's going to be a powerful super typhoon, it's going to hit colder water but accelerate. And a recurving typhoon with this amount of wind could affect our weather here in the U.S. towards the fourth week of October. What's going to happen is the jet stream, which is going to be active, will get energized. We'll see more dips and more rises. So kind of a roller coaster here, which could lead to more severe weather down the road as we get later into October here in the U.S. Here's a look at that recurve. You'll see it goes south of the Aleutian Islands, but it's not going to be tropical at this point, but it will energize the jet stream and lead to more active weather into the U.S. down the road. I hope you all have a great day. We'll have a video for you guys tomorrow. I'm traveling Friday through the weekend, so my last video this week will be on Thursday. But I do appreciate your support. If you did enjoy this video, please consider subscribing. And if you are a subscriber, please consider becoming a member if you'd like to support me. You obviously don't have to, but if you feel led to, I would appreciate that. $9.99 a month, and that helps me give you guys priority responses. I'm going to probably have some sort of merch here down the road. I haven't even thought about it, to be honest. We've been so busy, but very much appreciate that support from you guys. And it's great just to have a platform to share with you all weather here as a meteorologist, but it's even greater to serve God. I give all the glory to him. He gives me this platform to share my thoughts with you guys. He also allows me to kind of minister to you all. Honestly, I truly believe that I've been put here for a reason, to be a meteorologist, but also to share the good word of God. And, I was having a conversation with somebody the other day. They were like, man, I'm just praying to God that my team's going to win this weekend. And I kind of chuckled. I'm like, that's great. God answers prayers. But at the same time, he is no respecter of persons. And what that means is he doesn't have a favorite team. He doesn't play favorites with people. Paul tells the Romans church, Romans 2:11, for there is no respect of persons with God. For as many as have sinned without law shall also perish without law, and as many as have sinned in the law shall be judged by the law. For not the hearers of the law are just before God, but the doers of the law shall be justified. And what that basically means is God doesn't see any one person above any one other. We may have higher titles, higher pay grades, whatever you want to call it, but in God's eyes, we are all the same, especially those who believe, because those are the ones that will be living with Jesus in heaven after they transition from time on earth. This is not the only verse I found about that. Peter told the church in Acts 10:34-35, then Peter opened his mouth and said, of a truth, I perceive that God is no respecter of persons, but in every nation he that feareth him and worketh righteousness is accepted with him. And that just got me thinking over the weekend, with what's going on in Israel, that, whether or not there are Christians under attack, I know there are, but there's Jews or other folks that live over there, people of different beliefs, Arabs, Muslims, but God sees them all as the same. And God does not respect any one group over another. So when I see turmoil and things going on overseas, that's just got me thinking, I really need to pray for these folks because they are going through some incredible times. I talked with an elder of my church the other day. He said that there are people that we support overseas that literally were in the middle of the night, drawn out of their houses in their underwear with a light shining on them from above, where they had to basically run out and seek refuge. And that's just a scary thought. I think here in the U.S., well, I don't think we're any more respected in the U.S. as God's children as those overseas. I think we are very blessed and fortunate in that, for the most part, we don't go through things like that. I'm not saying that will never happen, and I pray it doesn't. But I just want you guys to know that, when I went back to these verses, it started with football, but it ended with, I need to pray for these folks, because this is a very, it's hard on me to see this kind of turmoil. I'm a person that wants to see peace. I want people to believe in Jesus, that they will have the grace, the good grace of God, that they will live eternally. But there's so much divide right now. There's so much sin. There's just so much going on that it's so hard to keep up with all the noise that's out there, but to also honor the folks that are really going through these tough times. So I'm going to pray for them, and I ask that you do as well if you are a person of prayer. If you are not a child of God, I'm not going to judge you. I will still pray for you, because I truly believe that there's more for you, like there was for me 10 years ago when I accepted Jesus Christ as my Savior. But just know that I don't respect any one group of people over others, because I truly believe we are all children of God, whether or not we've accepted God's gift to live with Jesus one day. And that's why I do what I do. Honestly, it's to share that good news and to encourage one another, and to just be there as somebody who, while I may be a Christian believer, I wasn't for 30 years, just somebody that can help other folks maybe find common ground with me before they can find higher ground with Jesus. So hope you all have a wonderful day. My prayers are with you and everybody else who is going through tough times, and I will chat with you all again tomorrow morning. Have a blessed day. I'll see you then.